Okay, and we're live.
And we also just lost Lady Bastard again, but it's okay. She'll make it back. Okay, so welcome back to book club, everybody. This week's pick was Loki's pick, Elephants on Acid and Other Bizarre Experiments. So I'm just gonna read you guys a quick introduction, and then we're gonna get started just discussing the book. So, in the following pages, you will encounter elephants on LSD, two-headed dogs, zombie kittens, and racing cockroaches, just to name a few of the oddities that await you. Some of these oddities might shock you, others might amuse you, still others might make you think that can't be true. However, I assure you, unless stated otherwise, it's all true. This is definitely a work of nonfiction. All of the strange phenomenons share one thing in common. They all have played starring roles in scientific experiments. What you're holding in your hand is a collection of the most bizarre experiments ever conducted. No knowledge of science is needed to appreciate them, just curiosity and appreciation for the odd. The criteria for inclusion. Did the experiment make me chuckle, shake my head in disbelief, grimace with disgust, roll my eyes, or utter shock and exclamation? Did it force me to wonder what kind of imagination, twisted or brilliant, could have dreamed up such a thing? If so, it went into the must include pile. As for the question of scientific worth, some of the experiments are brilliant examples of the scientific method, others are not. Mad scientists, geniuses, and heroes, villains, fools all rub shoulders here. So that is the introduction. Loki, so this was your pick. So why don't you get sure get started?
All right. Can you turn yourself down for a second? Okay. So, how did you guys like the book? For those of you who've read it, did you guys actually enjoy it? Because I know Siggy was having a horrible time trying to get through it.
Well,
Uh,
it's just because it's my job to read all of these kinds of stuff. And I already knew a lot of these experiments, like some of them I had studied in school. It was really interesting, though. I still was surprised by some of them. But I mean, women tend to like fictional books more, and men actually tend to like nonfiction. So it wasn't one of those books where I couldn't put it down because I wanted to know what happens next.
Yeah, I agree. It was similar for me, though it was quite
Hmm.
well written and had a sharp wit and stuff like that, which made it more enjoyable.
do any of you want to share a particularly favorite experiment out of any of these?
Oh, there's a bunch that I marked a bunch that I really liked.
Because in those
Well,
books,
we could always go with the one that the whole thing takes its name from.
Yes,
Right?
elephants on acid.
Let's talk about the elephants on acid.
So that was a good one. Um, so elephants on acid, and if you guys are interested, I post a link in the chat and it has the 20 of the most bizarre ones. So this one was who was it? Two zoo directors or something, and they wanted to know what would happen if you gave
no,
elephants.
it was a scientist who got the permission from one of the zoos to experiment to experiment on an elephant with LSD. It was part of the propaganda efforts to make LSD stigmatized back in the 60s. Because way too many people were apparently running around on acid. So they were like, Let's show the people that LSD can be dangerous."
Wasn't there another one where they were experimenting with elephant or psychosis, and elephants have similar brains to human beings in their complexity and so forth, and so they thought LSD cures psychosis, so that was a theory they had, and so
That's a
they
theory
were
they
That
have now.
well, what
that's a different experiment that I really want to get into later with one of the scientists that completely dosed people with a huge amount of LSD, sleep deprivation, and fucking electrolysis, all like in one form of treatment. Uh,
So in this story, what happens is they give this elephant about that his name was Tesco or her name was Tesco,
Tesco.
Yes,
and they give her or him, I don't know if it was a girl, I don't know her pronoun,
him.
um, was 3,000 times the level of a human dose. And apparently that was a bad idea
Okay.
because
obviously it was a bad idea. Also, the way they injected the elephant was a horrible idea. So
Yes.
they apparently scientists didn't do any like proper calculations to find out what the body mass ratio to LSD was supposed to be. And of course, this was all in the agreement that the elephant just kind of gets. Oh no, he was actually trying to induce psychosis in the elephant.
Yeah,
He
but
was
he
actually
thought it'd be like humans. Like they had already done their own experiment taking LSD, and they're like, okay, well, they did calculations. They're like, this is how much we took, and we got high. Let's like double it based on body mass weight. And then they gave this, and then they injected it instead of having it orally, which I think they did another experiment
okay.
another time where
The
they gave
trick
it
was that
orally.
he put 3,000 times the amount that a normal human takes, and he injected it through a dart gun, so it was almost instantaneous into the bloodstream. That
Yeah, so
was the thing that they realized was a horrible idea.
And,
um,
and then they had to inject an anti
they
LSD
tried.
drug.
They couldn't.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what they tried to do. They tried to do anything to get Tesco to calm down and like counteract the effects of the drug, but she went crazy and then died after an
I think it was.
hour.
I think Tesco
He
was a
was
he.
dead. Yeah,
That
he
was a
was
he.
dead. So yeah, and there was actually, interestingly enough, there was outrage at the time when this elephant died, and people were like, "What kind of experiment is this?" So all of the people who were outraged about Harambe in 2017, there were still people back in the day that were outraged about the unnecessary death of animals. So not everything's changed.
Well, I think the situation with Harambe was less ridiculous than the elephant thing.
Yes.
I think as a side note to this experiment, it was funded by the CIA.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
That was one of the main
is that
openers.
confirmed?
Yes, that is actually confirmed. The CIA funded it through one of their subsidiary agencies to test the actual effects of massive doses of LSD on people. So this doctor was actually funded by the CIA to perform this experiment, and he completely went completely out of his bounds. Actually,
Well, I
wait.
think one of the things the CIA was looking for was truth drugs, right? I mean,
Yes.
interrogation drugs.
Yeah, that's exactly. They were looking for truth serums.
Yeah.
The other one. Okay, so basically they injected Tusco with way too much LSD, which made him go kind of crazy, run around, foam at the mouth. To get him to calm down, they injected him with a really nice cocktail of other drugs that were supposed to sedate him. At which point, his heart pretty much exploded and he died.
I'm not a real doctor. It's like the doctor from Family Guy. It's not a real doctor. I don't know what it is. Cartoon doctors, never real doctors. Zoidberg. Zoidberg was doing it. It's just like, why?
The other one that I really liked that was earlier in the book was the touching strangers one. So this one was an experiment where they wanted to see if touch would translate into greater appreciation. And so they did an experiment at a restaurant where they had I think they had male and female waitresses, and they wanted to see that if they like squeezed the shoulder or did some sort of touch on the customer, whether that would translate to more tips.
Better tips, not more tips. But yeah.
And so the researchers collected data on 114 dinners, most of them college students. So the no touch condition generated a small tip. A touch on the shoulder earned 18% more, and a fleeting touch on the palm gathered a full 30%, 37% more for bonus. And
What
interestingly
did a lap
enough,
dance get you?
well, interestingly enough, when a man and a woman were dining together, the waitress earned more by touching the woman and not the man. So yeah, so if you were with your spouse or something and the female waitress touched the man, that's a no. But if she touches
yeah.
you, that actually leads to a higher tip.
I was actually working.
Even though touching the man still led to a higher tip than touching neither. So no
Actually,
matter what.
companies apply. I just wanted to say, actually, companies apply this because when I was working in customer service, they would always say, pander to the woman, don't look at the man, don't flirt with the man. If it's a couple, always, smile at the woman, and then it's more likely that they will buy some.
Well, I think it's to do both, but give greater amount of attention to the woman.
Yeah.
So I thought that one was really interesting, especially because we, even nowadays, of like, don't touch anybody, keep your hands to yourself, everything is assault. You're assaulting
Mhm.
people with your eyes. And like, here's a study that shows that a little bit of touch, even from a stranger, is not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, it's just that
It
one
makes
out of
sense.
so many are going to, file a harassment claim or something, which is
There
not.
was only one instance of a person who didn't like it in this
Oh, hold
experiment.
on. The other that experiment was actually somewhat different. I actually found it incredibly interesting. What they did was they were testing the subtleties of touch and whether people actually feel it or not. It was one of those interesting things where they had participants do completely unrelated tasks, like rate attractiveness of, I think it was rate attractiveness of the people's pictures that they saw, and the experiment would come by and give them a light touch on the shoulder. Although most people said they didn't notice that it happened at all, whenever they were touched on the shoulder, they would give higher ratings on the rating scale than they would. So that's it. So it's not subconscious; it's actually conscious. Most people just brush it off as if it's nothing. This actually was further explained where, like, if you and another person make contact, both people will register that contact completely regardless of whether they admit it or not. You sit next to somebody and your legs brush up against each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like sorry, and they go, "Oh, I didn't know this." That's always a lie. That's always a fucking lie. That is 100% noticeable by every human ever. And yes, also the attractiveness of the waitresses mattered quite a bit in the tips giving section.
Yeah.
I love a specific
For
passage
both men and women,
in the
too.
section of that experiment of the shoulder touching. If you could find that passage, I think I noted
I have
it
no
where
idea.
one of the they said almost everybody reciprocation of the touching was absolutely positive, except for one lady
I just said that.
who except for one lady that specifically freaked out. I want you to read the actual passage. Who actually freaked out and like just completely got fully triggered and had to fucking leave the experiment because somebody touched her shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that all by itself can be enough of a hassle that you just wouldn't do anything. You'd say, nope, we're not touching people because that was a pain in the ass.
And what I really wonder is if it's universal for all cultures, because some cultures are more touchy than others,
That's
and
true. Yeah,
and
actually
I
a
was
lot of
wondering about this, how much it would apply. In the West, sure, it's more common, but in the East, I don't know. Even my country is not very, huggy and
yeah, I mean in
Would
our
you would you
culture
lose your
versions
would you
are
lose your shit?
what do you
no,
mean?
no, but it's not very common for people, for example, to hug each other when they meet, or even shaking hands can be weird if it's not between men, like it's or it's unofficial. Like guys will shake each other's hands, but for girls it's not that common, and stuff like that. It varies between cultures. Like Southern European countries, they like kissing on the cheek more, and they touch each other much more than in the north. So I just wonder how universal it is, because some things just might actually be very off in a culture where
Well, I
it's
feel
not
like it is
common.
a technique of kind of manipulation too. Like peop I keep thinking of The Mentalist where he like gives people hot tea to make them more comfortable and these kind of situations to get people to do what you want and touches away
Oh, that was another
probably.
one of my
But
favorite
there was, hold on,
experiments.
before you go there was another study that wasn't in this book, but they found that babies who were deprived of touch like would die.
Oh,
So infants, newborn babies, if they were fed and taking, but they were deprived of actual physical touch, would die after a few months. So touch is huge in terms of connecting to other humans and being alive. But go ahead, Loki.
One of the other experiments that I found incredibly interesting is another part of this whole touch sensation thing, where they found that if you're holding a cold drink when you meet somebody for the very first time, you have a less favorable reaction to them than let's say if you're holding a warm drink in your hand. Basically, your brain tricks the sensation your body physically feels with actual emotion. It was actually really like when people ask you to go out, like it's one of the things where like if you want to go meet somebody or like get to know somebody better, your best opportunity is to ask them out for like coffee and have them hold a warm cup in their hand so they feel warmer towards you and are more receptive, as opposed to taking them out to a bar where you're always constantly holding cold drinks, which might actually make them colder towards you.
Hmm. No, I found that. I generally take people out for coffee. Honestly,
Of course you do. You're a super caffeinated person.
I do.
But
No, I
it's
just
interesting, the warm drink, like how that makes you more comfortable.
Yes, well, warmness is always one of those things that makes us comfortable, isn't it?
I guess.
you could get the same effect. I mean, if they actually drink the alcoholic beverage, that's also going to make them effectively feel warm. I mean, not temperature wise, but they're going to feel all fuzzy and happy. Just the whole point.
Mhm.
Please allow me to buy you intoxicating substances you'll put in your body.
There was one that was horrible, which
Ew.
really like a true evil mad scientist. So this was the beneficial brainwashing one.
Oh yeah,
Yep,
that's
that
what.
one's definitely funded by the CIA.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so Mary C
Hey,
checks
Amanda.
into, huh?
Hi.
Hello,
Hi.
how are you? Welcome.
Good. I finally got in one of these.
Yeah. Okay, so Mary C checks into a clinic complaining of menopause-related anxiety. I don't know what that was, but sure. And she imagines a few weeks of rest and relaxation, and perhaps some therapy. And what she gets is Dr. Erwin Cameron, and he is the director of Allen Memorial Clinic in Montreal. French people, crazy. And he starts doing funded, which I'm thinking is government funded, brainwashing experiment. And he puts them in like pretty much sensory deprivation cages.
Chambers.
He like chains them, puts wash like what does he do? He ties them down. He
Which progress of the thing? There was the deprivation, sensory deprivation chambers. Where after dosing them with high levels of LSD,
yeah, he
um,
drugs them so they can't fight back or
then
do anything.
then no, that later that's the later on after the second thing, he goes on to perform electrolysis on the brain.
Yeah.
And it almost completely what the fuck's it actually called? Lobotomizes them with electricity. And after that, he doses them with a large amount of drugs that keeps them partially awake, but then immobilized while chained down to the bed, listening to those audio tapes that keep saying things like, "Shit, I wish I had the book."
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying
Uh,
to find it. So then he wants to see if he can, once he breaks down the brain, like if he could rebuild it and get them to think get them to think what he wants. So he keeps putting messages in there, and there's like all these like anxiety provoking statements, and this is like an attempt to make them confront their fears. And he kept playing it over and over again until they couldn't stand it any longer. And so when they tried to take off the headphones, he would tie them down so that they had to be forced to listen. And the messages, hold on, I'm trying to find like what the messages were. Um, he made them so that it was all sorts of stuff like, Jane, you are at ease with your husband. Jane, and interestingly enough, he didn't realize that people could misinterpret the messages, and what Jane was actually hearing is that you are at ease with your husband. um
This was just downright evil.
yeah, like he was crazy.
but CIA funded.
And he wasn't even, morally, how to say,
He didn't care, like he's like, this is for
yeah,
science.
exactly. He wanted his Nobel Prize.
Yeah, he was convinced that he was going to win one.
Well-
But then later, the CIA kind of regretted what they did, and then they filed a lawsuit suit against him.
Well, you
Yeah,
see,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you see, psychopaths, like the genuine natural-born psychopaths, they used to go into fields like science and stuff because that acclaim, that's what they wanted. But nowadays, that's not where you get the acclaim anymore. It's by being rich and famous, and so that's what they go into now. And so
And,
you used to see a lot of more scientific advances, but in cruel ways because these people didn't have empathy.
No, he's trying to cure schizophrenia by literally creating amnesia in the person. Like he's just making them forget everything about
no,
who they are and wants to rebuild their identity.
Yeah, I'm
He's
saying
brainwashed
Yeah,
he's
he wanted
literally.
to, and even the whole
Oh.
premise, was fucking evil because he didn't just want to help them and get rid of schizophrenia or whatnot. He actually wanted to delete their previous personality and rebuild some sort of a new one, create a new one.
Well,
yeah.
but you could get that. You could get someone's consent to do that as well.
No, you can't. No board will ever pass that.
I
You,
understand.
you
No,
guys
no,
have to
no,
remember
no.
this was in the 60s. There was
Wait
no
a minute.
ethics board.
Wait
back
a
then.
minute. I'm not talking about the ethics board's consent. I'm saying the patient's consent.
But even if you get like you have to review. There's laws now of what you can
But
experiment on.
Yeah, and I'm okay. Okay, let me be very clear. Let's say someone is they've got very severe mental problems that involve a lot of medication to compensate for. And if I strap you down into a chair and I put you through something that may be awful for you, you'll actually be cured. How many people
Oh
do
yeah,
you
they
think
still
would?
strap down people like that.
Well, let's
I don't
Isn't
know.
Pence trying to
I
do
mean,
with
look.
the gays right now?
Well, I mean, here's one of the things that's fun about science is that people will disparage a lot of this stuff, but ultimately, if it turns out you did good science, people are going to be using your work for thereafter. I mean, we're still using the scientific research from the Imperial Japanese experiments on prisoners of war, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's still good
interestingly,
science.
in the introduction of the book, he does specifically say that he chose not to talk about Nazi experiments. So he
Mhm.
has a paragraph of saying where are the Nazis, and to him, he's saying that doesn't like those don't actually count as experiments. That's just like evil and torture and stuff.
Well, I understand,
But then he includes this one, so
but
I don't
medicine,
know.
but it's still in the medical textbooks right now.
Yeah, yeah. But he just chose not to discuss those ones. But he does discuss the Stanley Milgram experiment, and that one has some weird ethics behind it. But they've actually, for the sake of science, managed to replicate it. Do you guys remember the Stanley Milgram experiments, the
Yeah,
shock
I remember
ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one's for people who don't know. So that was he would put a participant in a room, and there would be someone who's dressed as some sort of authority figure, so some sort of doctor experimenter. And there's a machine in front of them, and it has shocks, and it goes from like low to extremely high, XXXX. And so in another room, they're told that there's a participant in another room who's sitting there, and they're going to be asked a series of questions. And if they get the questions wrong, they have to shock them. And every time they get it wrong, they have to take up the shock level. And so they don't know that there's actually no person in there who's getting shocked. For all they know, this person is actually being shocked. And so the fake, it was actually a recording, and the answers are wrong on purpose, and they wanted to see how far people would go. And it was actually really interesting how like people would still take it all the way to the end because the authority figure kept telling them to. So they would keep saying it's essential that you continue. This experiment needs you to continue. And they're like, are you sure this guy's going to die? They had like someone like screaming and begging for it to stop, and like they still kept going. And they found that over 70-80% of people, both males and females, there was no gender differences, were willing to take it all the way to the end under as long as it was someone
With a lab
when
coat.
with someone with a lab coat was telling them to continue.
When they took off the lab coat, that dropped to
That
about
dropped.
50-50.
Yes, and what else dropped is the proximity. So if they actually put a person there and they were watching it, they wouldn't continue. So
Yeah.
the case where it was the highest was when the person was in a separate room and they couldn't see what was happening. And so proximity would change it. So that was really interesting. And then a couple years ago, so the reason that that one became an ethical one is because the people who conducted like the people who were the participants, even though they went all the way, it really distraught them. Like it was really upset. They started crying. One guy started hysterically laughing. Another one was like sweating, having panic. Like it really made them uncomfortable. And so the ethic thing is like, can you do this can you mislead your participants to this extent? And so they decided a couple years ago, for the sake of history and science, to replicate it, and the results were pretty much the same.
Which is hilarious because it was after the Milgram experiment, then they had the prison experiment. And
Yes.
after that, they decided you can't experiment on people anymore. And yet we still keep doing it. Like
Well,
that TV show, what
the
would you
prison
do?
experiment was, I think, was worse than the Milgram one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So the prison was Philip Zimbardo's prison experiment, where he takes about 20 undergrad kids, randomly picks half of them to be guards and half of them to be prisoners. And then in the basement, this was done at Stanford. In the basement, they set up like a mock prison. And so they made this really realistic, where they actually worked with the cops. And so the kids didn't know who got picked as guard or prisoners. And so one morning, like, cops just show up at the house of the kids who were picked as prisoners because they want to make this realistic, and they actually get arrested and whatever. And within 3 days of the experiment, they had to shut it down because the guards started abusing the prisoners, mocking them, making fun of them, forcing them to do really uncomfortable things. And like, you have to think that this was even fake. So these prisoners weren't actually people who had done anything wrong. So so that adds like another level of messed upness to what happened. Like, people needed therapy for like years after. One person actually ended up becoming a guard in his adult life, which I thought was interesting. But yeah,
Which sample was he from?
it was only one sample. They had to shut
What I
down.
mean is, was he a guard or a prisoner?
I don't remember. I think he was a prisoner. But it was like, I watched a documentary on it. It was really bad. Like, they would try to force like them to eat like dirty food that had like hair and just like dirt on it.
Was that part of the experiment that they do that, or was that on
No,
their?
he just gave them free reign. Like, your guards, your prisoners, here's go. And like they would
The whole point
start
was that they
shaming.
completely adapted the roles as
Completely.
guards and actually started to buy into them and feel like they are our guards in the real prison, and started to like humiliate and abuse the prisoners, even though
So it just went Lord of the Flies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
both.
much.
Yeah. It kind of explains the natural human tendency to be disgusting to people you consider less than you. And it shows that we should just stop thinking of people as less than us. We're all people.
Right.
A large portion of my YouTube videos, or at least I try to present this argument quite often, is the fact that I'm sorry to bring this back to the fucking SJW bullshit, but they have this rhetoric where they're trying to dehumanize everyone to a certain degree, and they keep yelling about dehumanization and how the evil white man, the evil white man, the evil white man, and they turn the evil white man into a boogeyman, and then they start creating shit like Antifa, where they're starting to say it's okay to use violence against people that you disagree with. And that's what they did. They slowly dehumanized an entire subculture, and slowly starting to call to action violence against them, which is exactly what the Nazis did to gain all the power that they did.
Look, when
Dehumanized.
Part of
Okay.
fringe, right?
Lady, speak up.
I
said,
could
or the fringe alt-right. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my voice.
Oh, the fringe alt-right.
Well, what was interesting though about this experiment is that the guards were the ones. It's really as soon as, and this is how you know this one experiment is proof of power corrupting, because the guards were the ones who wanted to take it seriously. And originally the prisoners started rebelling, and they're like, guys, like, relax, this is a stimulation, this isn't real. And the guards got mad and started trying to insert their authority. So even challenging them is what kind of made it worse for them. So they did try to retire. So this is the stuff that they did. They would They blasted, huh? You told me to turn myself down.
Into the microphone.
It's hard to read and talk. They'd get them to get out of bed, start yelling at them. They would blasted the prisoners with fire extinguishers. They stripped the prisoners naked and herded them into the yard and made them do jumping jacks, sit-ups, and push-ups. And then the person who had started the rebellion, they put him into solitary and to make him dwell on misbehavior. They put in curfews. They implemented random street searches. They revoked bathroom privileges, making prisoners pee in buckets. So that like the smell of urine was in the cells. They induced psychological tactics. So yeah, and then they started pitting them against each other. Like they created a privileged cell for good prisoners.
Where were
like
these
that's
students
safe.
drawn from? Were they drawn from the general
They're all
population?
classmates.
They
together.
were Stanford students. They were all Stanford male
What I mean is
undergraduate students.
in psychology students.
Yep, they were psychology students.
I actually would like to see this experiment done again. Only I would like a larger population. I'd like it to be like 2 groups. I want to see SJWs as the prisoners and anti-SJWs as the guards, and then in the other group do it the other way around.
See who
Ooh.
becomes more abusive.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
But the reason the experiment hasn't been recreated since is because everyone's now claiming that it's too hardcore. What is it? The ethics board is just saying, "Fuck no, we can't let this
No,
happen
yeah,
again."
this would never happen again.
Oh yeah, no. I'm not suggesting they actually do it. I'm just saying I would like to see it.
But let's do it. Let's just kidnap a bunch of SJWs and anti-SJWs.
Well,
Stick
the
them
students
in
No,
did.
the
no,
house.
get them to agree. They agreed
Yeah,
to do
they
this.
signed a piece of paper. They know what it was. You can show them a video, like a little documentary on what this thing was last time, and you say, "Look, this is we're redoing this. Who wants to sign up?"
Exactly.
I mean, if you
I
say
feel like
yes,
people will be too eager. Way too eager.
Give them money and people will sign up.
there you go, $1,000. Show up.
You might,
You know
have
what?
to do horrible things. We don't know what's gonna happen, but yeah.
Let's crowdfund it. I'm willing to do it. I know we're willing to crowdfund a bunch of the feminists and send them over to Africa to be feminists in Africa. Also, a bunch of Black Lives Matter. We're also thinking of crowdfunding a bunch of plane tickets for Black Lives Matter to go to where they're actually needed. But this is also
Where
worth it.
would that be?
Africa.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the biggest abuses of Black people in the entire world is actually happening in Africa by Black people.
I was
to
gonna
Black people.
say by other Black people.
Yeah. And the BLM really, they really need BLM in Africa. Like that's one place I don't see them having chapters. If you go to their website, they have chapters all over Europe, Canada, America, maybe even Mexico. Not a single one in Africa. I wonder why.
In Africa, they got real problems to deal with. Like, am I going to be kidnapped and sold as some warlord's bride or rape slave while I walk to the store today?
Yeah, but we're not supposed to say that.
Loki, do you want to talk about the white bear and the gorilla
Oh,
one?
God. The white bear. The white bear is actually a really simple experiment. I actually wanted to talk about the monkeys they stripped away, or the kittens, or the 2-headed dogs.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I think that's very
can I throw something in real quick that was from what y'all talked about before I came in that I didn't say in chat?
Sure.
Y'all were talking about the experiments on deprivation of touch and stuff, and they got started on that because of orphans over in Russia, in Ireland. They had mass amounts of orphans in these kinds of places, and they were in China too, and they were just being left in rooms pretty much, and being given a ball. They weren't getting any human interaction, and they were seeing some very strange things happen to these orphans. And so
Yeah.
they began to experiment on what you could do with that with an adult, if it would have the same effects.
Yeah, and I think they even found just having someone come in for a few minutes. And isn't there like now cuddle therapy?
In a lot of places, yes, because that's true.
Ooh,
They
Japan's
discovered
really
that
known for
because
that.
of one woman who spent her entire life tirelessly going around and picking up each of these orphans for 2 minutes a day. I forget
Yes.
her name.
Yes.
And they saw a massive change in the orphans that she interacted with.
and they started doing better and becoming healthier. It's so crazy. Like this is
And that's the kind of stuff that led to them understanding that babies do need to be placed skin to skin with mothers pretty much the second they're born. It's very important for them. They've actually
yeah.
brought preemies back to life that were there's a video of it on YouTube of this family demanded that they be allowed to hold their preemie even though they were told he was dead. And after about 2 minutes of holding him and rubbing him and loving on him, he started breathing and
That's
crying.
insane.
It is massively important to have skin to skin contact after a baby is born.
Well, sensory deprivation is also a form of torture. Like they can do that, and people will go crazy after a while.
Yes. What about that experiment with the monkey? Where they kept fucking stripping away. Like, was that in this book?
The Harlow experiment, the
The,
mother's
Oh,
touch. Oh
yeah, the
yeah.
monkey's mother touch. That was
Oh,
in this
the
book.
Harry. So those are the rhesus monkeys experiment, and that is a little bit to do with touch. So what they wanted to know, Harry Harlow, what he wanted to know is whether the only reason that primates are attracted to their mother is because of food, and no other reason. Like this is the survival. She feeds us. So what he did is he took created two conditions where he had monkeys that would be with like a wire mother, like just this ugly wire mother, but it would give food and nothing else. And they found that these monkeys started developing like behavioral problems and becoming really, really aggressive. And then in the second condition, it was a wire mother versus a cloth mother. So they just took the same mother and wrapped it in a soft cloth. But that soft cloth mother wouldn't give food, only the wire mother. And they found that the monkeys would go for food to the wire mother, but whenever they were scared or uncomfortable, they'd run to the cloth mother and cuddle with the cloth mother. And so they found like all of these conditions, the softer, the more friendly looking the mother was, that's where they went for safety and security. And the ones that didn't have that developed serious problems. And when they had their own baby monkeys, they didn't know how to treat their own monkey, like their own children. Like they were abusive towards their own children when they didn't have an actual mother. And in the final condition, they actually found that the monkey could be raised by, I forget what the type of dog is, but there was a dog that became the mommy. Um,
was it
it
a
was
cat? I thought it was
yeah. So
The cat and the gorilla. Was that in
oh,
this
wait,
book
he
too?
also like he found emotion, so that even when the cloth mother was rocking, that was also a more preferable like surrogate mother for the monkeys. And then finally, yeah, he did one where um the monkey was raised by a dog, and he cuddles with the dog and rides around on the dog's back as his mom. So that was just evidence of like how children also need touch and affection and safety and security, and not just food from their parents.
That's how they started to develop the I forget who Erickson's stages of development for
Yeah,
children.
yeah.
So monkeys apparently need lots of warmth and cuddling, but apparently turkeys don't. There was an experiment in this book about the mating habits of turkeys. And they were wondering why they're reaching. I don't know why they're specifically dumb. I guess I don't actually remember what the experiment was all about. But they set up a fake turkey as realistic as possible and let a male turkey try and have sex with it, and it did. And then they stripped away the other piece, and it still had sex with it, and it kept going
Yeah.
and going and going and going until there was only a head left over, and it was even a severed turkey head that was actually starting to shrivel up on the pole. And the male turkey didn't care. He still had sex with it. So
That's horrible.
apparently, yeah, turkeys don't care.
Talk about your two-headed dog ones if you want.
Okay, so the two-headed dogs. This experiment is more relevant than normal, specifically because I think the same research performed with these two-headed dog experiments are now being used in Russia by this other doctor who's trying to transplant somebody's head. If you guys have heard about it, it was some of that crazy news back last year, where there's this guy who's got some crippling disease where his body's just degrading completely, but his like brain is fully functional. And the Russian doctor's like, you know what? I'm gonna try and perform the world's first head transplant. We know whose head. We know basically know which prisoner has officially decided to donate his body to this man because apparently someone's gonna get killed. And he's like, oh, we're just gonna cut off his head and transplant this guy's head onto it. So back in the Soviet era, a bunch of doctors decided to see if this kind of thing was possible by cutting puppies into half and trying to sew on their bodies to to the necks of other full grown dogs.
They
And
also
they were very successful.
For like
They were
30 seconds.
no. They were fully successful for it. The dogs would live for months and months and months. Then tissue rejection would start to occur.
They didn't live for months and months.
They did live for months.
Okay.
The
I
Americans
didn't pay
scoffed at
attention
it.
to those ones.
Of course you didn't get it. The dogs were very like the puppies
They
would
were
try and drink and everything. The Russian scientists were very proud of themselves, but the American scientists scoffed at them and told them they're the crazy Soviets, and they have no idea what the hell they're doing, and this isn't real science. So the CIA decided to pay some other guy to perform similar experiments to see how much of the head or how much of the body is actually necessary for the head to survive. So they decided to take monkeys and paralyze them with injections and slowly strip away their bodies to see how much of their body they actually need for the brain to continue living. So I think they got to the point where they basically first they got down to just the head, where the monkey would try and speak and yell and hiss, but there's no lungs. They have like a dialysis machine pumping blood through it, and then he's like, I think I can go further. So he removed the skull, and then all the skin, and it basically just had two eyes on the pedestal and a brain, and it just the machine circulating the blood and keeping the blood not coagulated. So yeah, so that's the towards Amanda's previous statement of some doctors are just sociopaths that they
Yeah.
want to see how far they can take it.
That's what
So
I'm
the
saying. I think we
doctor-
had a generation of psychopaths that went into the medical and scientific fields because they knew that's where they would achieve excellence. But now we have a generation that is going into the business fields and running the country kind of fields because that's where they know they will achieve excellence.
I do seem like they're going into the media and blogs now.
So the Soviet physician that you're saying, Sergei Buchenhank, whatever. He one quote that he said, I am even tempted to have my own head cut off so I can continue to dictate plates and books without being bothered by illness.
Oh my
And without having to dress and undress, and without having to eat, without having to do anything other than produce masterpieces of dramatic art and literature.
He was actually, if you think about it, just massively ahead of his time because they're working on that kind of thing right now.
No pun
downloading
intended.
people into computers.
But if you guys wonder where Futurama got their ideas of severed heads and jars, this is it right here. This is that experiment.
So do you guys want to talk about the one where they tried to make a gay man straight?
Oh, I just finished reading that
Oh,
one.
right. I just read that.
No,
they
no,
did
they
a
didn't
lot of-
try. They
They
succeeded.
succeeded.
Yeah.
How
Well,
Mike Pence
maybe
wants to
he
use
turned-
electrolysis to turn gay men straight? This was done back in the 60s successfully, but not through harming electroshock therapy. Sorry. I'm gonna let someone else take this one.
Okay, so the story is that this happened in 1954. And they found a patient, they named him B19. He was referred to as a homosexual patient. And he was very withdrawn, very depressed, very unhappy. These
Okay,
characters.
he was a very regular case of where your parents kick you out of the house and treat you like shit, and you go on the streets and become a drug addict prostitute. That's what he was.
Pretty much, yeah. And so they inserted Teflon insulated electrodes. So he wanted to know if you could, if you started stimulating the pleasure centers of the brain, whether you could fix depression. And they actually did this in a bunch of rats, and they found that the rats would keep pressing it until they died. Like they forewent food, they forewent everything. Like they would just press the button that kept stimulating the pleasure centers in their brain, like 4,000 or 5,000 times a minute. and then would like
It
kill
wasn't
themselves.
4,000 times a minute. It was the fucking rats would continuously press the goddamn button and completely neglect food, and scientists had to just fucking disconnect the button. Uh, but yeah, it was several times. It was several times. It was the rats would do it several times a second for a very long duration of time, and would
And so they
neglect everything else in life.
and so they did this with him, and so he would and so it started working, and he reported increased stirrings of sexual motivation, and then they rigged the device to allow him to stimulate himself, and he also became obsessed with the pleasure button, and in one 3-hour session he pressed it 1500 times until the doctors noted that he was experiencing an almost overwhelming euphoria and elation and had to be disconnected, in which he like begged for them not to. And so by this stage, they had jacked up his libido, and they decided to instigate the final stage, in which he would be introduced to a sexually willing female partner.
Wait,
And
wait,
so they brought a
you
prostitute.
you missed a very vital part of this whole experiment. The vital part of the experiment is that they were stimulating him while making him watch heterosexual
Oh,
pornography.
right.
All right.
They started with doing readings on his brain when he was watching gay pornography, I guess. I don't know if they had gay pornography back
Oh,
then.
yeah, they did that. And they
And then they
said
just switched over
originally.
to straight pornography and registered no brain activity. Then they even introduced the electrodes into his brain and started stimulating the pleasure center of his brain as he was watching regular heterosexual pornography to the point where they just let himself do it to himself. At which point his brain started to associate heterosexual sexual activity with pleasure.
Well, in all honesty, they've proven that you can reroute the neural pathways in your brain. They did that with amputee victims. They give them arms and stuff that they can control with their minds, and
Yeah.
their brain has to find a new part to
Mhm.
control the arms with because they don't have them anymore and they can't use the same part of the brain they did before. So it only makes sense that you could do it with sexual orientation as well. The question is the ethics of doing that to someone.
Well, the guy was fully willing to do it, so he allowed himself to be put into the program, and by the time they were done, as Siggy was about to say, they wanted to test the final results, and they hired a prostitute, who was willing to show up to the lab to have sex with somebody. And they joked about the fact that he actually had like wires and shit attached to the outside of his head and inside of his head. So it was a really weird situation. But he was actually, since he's never been with a woman before, the accounts are like of him being really shy and trying to talk to
Yeah.
her and explain to her and self-deprecate a lot.
Yeah, in the
Uh,
beginning, he wanted to like talk about feelings, and she was getting bored, and she's
for
like,
like an
"Buddy,
hour.
I'm here for a reason."
I don't have a lot of time.
Well, they paid her $50 for the 50s. That was a lot. That was a lot of money.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the end, he successfully ejaculated into the prostitute and had an orgasm. And then he was released, and he apparently persisted to have affairs with married women in his future.
No, no.
And
The point was that he consistently stayed straight, except for a few times where he fell on hard financial times. At which point he would once in a while revert back to homosexuality for a quick cash grab.
And so they're saying that this could have just been a one-off. We don't know. This was a case study, so we're unsure of whether this could be
Well, don't
replicated.
worry. Mike Pence will recreate these experiments to the fullest extent, and we will find out whether it actually works.
I think it would have to do with, yeah, the willingness of the person, you know? Like if they're really truly wanting to not be what they are, wanting to change, then I bet they
Yeah.
could change, especially if they had something to help them reprogram their mind. But I mean, if somebody is just, wanting to change because then they'll fit better into their religion or their community or their family, this probably wouldn't work for them.
It's just interesting. Like, if a trans person wants to transition, for example, no one's judgmental of that. But if a gay person decides of their own will that I don't want to be gay anymore, I want to be straight, that would be looked down upon.
Well, because they feel like that perpetuates the narrative that being gay is a choice. And nobody's really saying that, but you can choose not to be. You could always choose
But
not
then
to be.
being a
If you
gender
have
is a
this
choice?
medical procedure, then it literally does become a choice. And you can take a straight guy and make him gay.
Wait. I feel like we hit one of those weird double think moments because the liberal the leftists keep going on about how the sexuality is a fluid gauge that's very fluid and it shifts from back and forth. But also a lot of leftists saying that you're born gay. So I think they have to choose whether you are actually born gay or whether you could
Oh,
choose to be gay, because otherwise this narrative doesn't work
no,
on either.
you're talking about why there's a conflict between the trans community and the LGBT or LBG whatever LGBT community.
Relevant.
Because no, because they're contrary positions. The argument from the feminists and whatever is that it's all that it's a social construct. Gender is a social construct. Then you've got an argument from the gay and lesbian community where they say they don't make a choice, and then you've got the argument from the trans people who will say that the gender and whatever is some sort of fluid thing that you can
That would be
modify.
like
Move in and out of.
I need to specify that would be the transgender community, not the very rare cases, but they are out there of genuinely transgender people. They see gender as very much a binary, and they see themselves as belonging to the opposite one of what their body is. And science even says that that's true. They've tested people and found that they will have the brain
I'm not contradicting
gender
that.
their body.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you've got at least three incompatible different impressions of what is going on.
Yeah.
That are all in the same circus tent, and I mean, I'm just kind of amazing that they haven't all killed each other yet, because they can't all three of them be right.
Right, at all.
Sure we can. The double thing, the triple thing.
So you're saying you can be born gay, and you can also transition into being gay, and you can convince yourself that you're gay.
And that gender
You also can be gay for political reasons.
and that gender is a social construct.
It's
Yes.
like they take the whole nature versus nurture debate and they think that they have to solve it one way or the other. It must be nature or it must be nurture, and that's got to be how it is for every single person every time. And
How
that's
are we
not
still
what it
having
is.
this debate? I thought we agreed a
makes
long,
no
long time ago. It's a
sense.
combination of both and only both. You
Yeah,
can't have one or the other unless you grow up in a forest somewhere raised by dogs. Then fine, you can be in nature.
It's only
No,
going to
that's
get
still
worse. Though.
nurture.
no,
And
that's
dogs
still
can nurture
nurture
you.
because you have the
Nurture.
nurture from the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a combination of both, and it's a different combination of both for each individual person.
Yes, because the human mind has more
But-
connections than the stars in the sky.
But what if there's money to be made by saying X or Y? See, and
They're
Then-
gonna
then you
do.
probably-
and riddle me this: imagine if all of the subsidies, all of the oppression points, all of that went away. How many people would give a shit one way or the other?
No fucking body. Nobody does
I
give a
don't.
shit.
Nobody.
Well,
think-
except
I
for it's
don't think-
become a big national issue. You say it hasn't become a big issue. That's because there's money and power wrapped up in this.
The
That's what
media
it is.
keeps pushing it. Like on average, the everyday people don't really care about this stuff.
Well,
I don't know
Yeah,
why. It's just the
100%.
universities and the media and like,
come
fucking
down
places
to
like-
Los Angeles. I'll show you lots of people on the street that
oh yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
care.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I keep mentioning that I grew up in goddamn Toronto, one of the most liberal places on the fucking planet, and I don't give a flying fuck whether you're gay or not. I don't know why this is being shoved down my throat in my city.
Because it feels so good.
I grew up in Texas, one of the most conservative places there is, and I don't give a fuck either.
Why is it being shoved down their throats? Actually, you know what? I might have an
Because
answer for
not
that.
giving a fuck
Because-
isn't
no,
enough.
no,
You
no,
have to
no, no, no.
advocate.
No,
You have
because
to
we're
be a
importing
fighter.
Islam, and we have to fucking socialize a brand new breed of people who do give a fuck about homosexuality. Even
No.
the Christians stop giving a fuck.
No, it's not about Muslims. No, look, here the thing is, and this is one of the things that makes me really sad with the evangelicals, because they fall for it every single time, is the reason they ask for these things is not so you'll say yes, but so that you'll say no. And they're going to push it. If you say yes to whatever they're asking for, then they're going to ask for something crazier, because what they want you to do is say no, and then then they have the narrative of you're standing in the way of my civil rights. See, if you don't stand in the way of it, they don't get to LARP as civil rights activists. There you go.
Yeah, that's true. They have to have something to bitch about. That's what it is.
Yeah, and now it's that like one of the things on Black Lives Matter or Dear White People was that don't pretend that you are unless you are like an advocate for black issues and you're fighting for like to take down white supremacy, you're still racist. So it's not enough to like not care about the
No,
issues. Like
you're
if you're
always
indifferent.
racist. Let's just forget. Let's just be clear about it. All white people are racist, and
Wait.
everyone who says they're not racist
That's
are
literally the
racist.
last thing I read in this experiment. Shit. Give
Which
me the book. Give me
one?
the book. Give me the book. I don't want to put refresh. The
And chapter 10.
Okay, so there was an experiment. This is one of the last things I read. It was perfect. It was a perfect explanation for the situation. Where is it? You guys can talk, but
So
it
the
was
other
the
one, just to touch on, there was
it was the
the
gay detector.
oh, okay, until you find that. There was
Oh,
another
that
one.
one. They what they simulated. They basically came up with a bullshit excuse story that they're going to measure your level of gayness, and
Yeah,
they tapped some needles that they basically showed you homosexual porn, and no, not porn, but suggestive images of men in, and the
compromising.
more suggestive they got, the more quote unquote higher your blood pressure, whatnot, your sexual arousal got. In fact, it was a fake
But
thing,
they were
but
like artificially rigging it to go up.
yeah,
And then
and
people were
and they
panicking because they thought that they were
yeah,
gay.
and they asked to actually tell what the other person next to you, what do you think? Sorry for my English today. Oh,
Yeah.
but what the person next to you, what his level of gayness was, and the higher your skill showed, the more likely they were to um, you know overrate the other person, quote unquote gayness as well. Sorry for my English today; it's not the best day.
So essentially, people were more afraid of being considered as gay than actually being gay. I feel like that one was saying. So then maybe, yeah, that there are certain what people think matter. And
No, the point was that okay, the huge majority of this experiment was that it was incredibly stigmatized to be a homosexual back in the goddamn 50s and 60s, like incredibly stigmatized. Like they wouldn't let you into goddamn stores and they could fire you for finding out that you're gay. Um, well, what they were trying to do was to see if you can attribute these negative qualities that you're discovering about yourself onto other people fairly quickly, and that's my segue from the SJWs. The SJWs
hmm.
feel like they're racist. They know that they're racist deep down inside because that's what they're taught all the time.
Well, you're
And
supposed to admit that you are. That's
no, we've gone over this many times. Yes, you have to fucking confess your sins of homosexuality and bigotry and all the other bullshit before you can join the SJW cult. Once you join the SJW cult, you are clearly, as this experiment shows, now are supposed to project these exact same feelings onto other people because you know they exist within you, so you project
yeah.
it onto others and expect other
Yes.
people to have the same levels of hatred and or whatever this negative quality is. But it was a really interesting experiment to actually show how strong projection is and how subconscious it is as well.
But that's what you see in all people that get like super mad like that over situations. Like they've proven that most of the people who are extreme homophobic people, they're actually gay.
Yes,
Or
The
at least have
Yeah.
some
at
people
least they
hate
tendencies.
have
what they
really
hate
They're
about
strong
even saying that
homophobic.
themselves.
about the Orlando guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He was a frequenter of that fucking club, a
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
frequent member. He showed up to the gay club all the time.
Yeah.
Just one time he walked by with his dad, and his dad fucking commented about how he hates all the fags and the fags should all die. And the guy fucking snapped and went, "Holy shit! I didn't realize that was a gay club. I thought everyone was just being really nice to me."
But like I swear to God, SJWs would look at this book and be like, "See, this is evidence for the patriarchy," and like the like studies experiments on gay people. Like it's so interesting. This book came out like 10 years ago, and it was really well received. I feel like if it came out now today, there'd be
Oh,
backlash against it of like
Well,
giving.
okay.
I mean,
What about one of the last experiments? One of the other last experiments I read. What was the one where men and women would fucking walk around and literally
yeah,
ask to have sex with people?
I
Yeah.
wanted to
Oh yeah.
mention that one too, and it completely proved, all the basically old-time assumptions that everyone knows on their gut instinct that women are more selective in their partners, but of
Because
course.
it's evolution. So this experiment was they wanted to see who would be more receptive to a sexual inquiry. So they had students on campus, some attractive guys and attractive girls, go one by one to people and ask them, would you, like straight up, would you have sex with me tonight? Or would you come to my apartment or things like that? And so the results were like 4% of women said yes, and most, as opposed to like 80% of men who said yes. And a lot of men even inquired, can we go now? Why wait for tonight? And the women would get
For those who
offended
are
and bothered by the. But then they found that when they switched it and they asked women and men if they would go out to dinner with them tonight, more women would more likely say yes. So it was about 50-50, which is so the feminists at the time were saying it's has to do with women not being safe or not knowing that like they could go somewhere being safe. But really, it's just that you want to get to know the person and see if there are a possible selective mate before you spend time
Well,
procreating.
I mean, yeah, because the responsibility of that has always evolutionarily fallen on women. Like, we're the ones who are deciding whose genes we are reproducing with. Men, all they've ever thought, like, historically and evolutionarily, is I want to spread my genes as much as possible.
Yeah,
That's how you win in evolution. But
yeah.
women, we got to decide whose
It
genes
depends.
do
It
we
depends on the
want.
type of the hookup. If you look at more of the original human context of like a tribal environment, it changes because everyone knows each other.
Yeah, I
It,
think
it, it
so.
changes it changes it rather dramatically. I
Yeah,
think it's always dangerous to impose the city context on human beings because we really haven't lived in it in cities that long. I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint.
yeah, I was gonna say we're just kind of discovering how it's gonna affect our decision making process today. Like, we see kind of the hookup generation going on, and nobody's even thinking about the fact that you are creating a child. This is a generation that you're putting out there, and you're being fucking stupid about
Well,
it.
now we also have the freedom to not to be able to engage in sex without having to procreate, which wasn't a thing that's been around in human history for very long. And so the risk of like the risk of pregnancy was a lot higher before. But even now there's like the risk of STDs, but even those are treatable. Like it's not the same as it was back then.
But I also feel like lack of education to children about how to prevent creating a baby has it's taken like the responsibility off of their shoulders in their minds. They think, oh, as long as, I can go have an abortion, then it's fine. I'm not gonna have the baby. And that's just
Well,
fucked up.
I don't know if that's true because the statistics show that teenagers, for example, are the abortion rate, the sex rate, the teen pregnancy rate is all going down. Like right now, teens are having less sex than ever before.
Well, we actually, because we are changing the education, it's starting to change. They're starting to get smarter about it. I just want to see that continue. But we did
Yeah.
see for a while a bubble of this, and we still have this group of people that are running around thinking that like abortion is birth control, and it's not.
I wouldn't say it's just the education. I mean, look at Japan. Do you think it's the result of their education?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble understanding you,
Yeah,
lady.
lady, you have to speak up.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep my voice down
I know,
because
I
there's
know.
people around. No, I just said that look at Japan. This is the fertility rate the result of their education, or is it the natural result of the, a
Yeah, I
natural
guess.
swing of the pendulum back to the, what
I mean,
was before
overall, I
the
wonder if
baby.
people are having less sex than they did before, just like the human
They are.
species.
They are. We've seen the studies where the teenagers are literally having way less sex.
But not just teenagers. Like, I wonder if this is just generally people overall, like, don't have time for sex, don't value it as much, like, don't
I,
care
I
about
blame I blame Tinder.
relationships.
I blame Tinder fully.
It could be, but it could just also be like porn has gotten really good,
I
and
think
both
it's
men and women are watching more porn than before.
I think it's also kind of subconsciously a natural, again, evolutionary thing. The fact that our population has gotten pretty high. We as a
Yeah.
species realize our food sources are running low, and naturally we're going to produce less offspring because we know the future for those offspring are not as assured.
Yeah, I think so. The interesting thing, so just on this topic, there was one other experiment in this, which was the hard to get women. So they wanted to test whether women who played hard to get were more desirable than women who didn't. And they actually found, so they did it with, so the study was done with prostitutes again. They were very big participants in this book. And they had two conditions where one condition was just the guys who went to see their favorite prostitute, so the prostitute that they kept going to. One condition, they didn't say anything, but in another condition, the women would say that, oh, like, you're not going to be able to see us anymore. Like, we're going to, this might be the last time you see me. I might be going somewhere else or something like that. And they wanted to see if that actually increased desirability, like the potential that this would be like the last time. And they actually found the opposite effect, that it was the guys got more disinterested when it was something that was potentially going to be like so hard to get wasn't really a thing. And they actually found that in the conditions where women play hard to get towards other men, but then show attention to the man of interest, that's the most desirable situation, as
I don't feel
opposed to
like you
just.
needed to do a whole study on that. You could have just looked at basic human nature. People like to be exclusive. That's literally exclusivity.
Yeah.
That's what my husband loves about having me tell the whole internet about our sex life. Makes him look good, makes him smile.
There you go. But it's exclusively his sex life.
Mm-hmm.
So good, perfect. What else do we have? Well, speaking of sex life,
The other one,
go ahead. Hello.
Lady?
oh, you, okay. The other one I really liked, and we didn't brush on, it was the Spanish matador guy.
Oh, the one
The
that
one,
implanted the
yeah,
electrodes into the bull's head.
yeah, and he could basically stop its coordinate its movements and whatnot, and I like and the implications are quite scary and at the same time fascinating. Like those rats, for, you know that you can operate that would search I don't know earthquake places or whatnot. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it had a lot of implications of mind control and even mind reading. Later on in the book, they even talk about the cat. They fucking attach electrodes into its head. You can actually go see a video on this on YouTube. They attached a bunch of electrodes into the cat's head to see if they could read what the cat was seeing. So they show the video, and then they see if they can translate the electrical signals from its brain to actually translate the visual image onto a different screen. And it's actually a really cool looking video because we are reaching that point where we can translate
No,
the brain
it's already
signal.
happened. It's already
Has
happened.
has it been
Yeah.
perfected though?
Well,
Yeah,
perfected.
yeah.
They've I would perfected is that's a high standard. But they've been able to basically wire webcams into people without eyes.
Oh, that, yeah, okay. No, that's slightly different because that's giving that brain a new signal to interpret, and
Oh,
people are absolutely able to interpret that signal. We do have synthetic eyes that we can implant to people. I've literally seen people on the subway in Toronto with hearing implants. Like the implant is attached to their head, and it goes into their ear. Like that's a signal that the brain is now translating.
Yeah, cochlear
Yeah.
implant. Do you think that
Uh,
we'll get to a point like that movie Repo Men? Or, well, the opera, but I saw the movie version. I liked it.
I would suggest watching Ghost in the Shell because that's where I want to get to. And since the movie's coming out recently, we can plug that. Not that we're getting sponsored by these people. I would love to though. But no, like one of my favorite aspects of this technology is the ability to be able to record your own the things you see. So like if you go to sleep and dream, you might be able to record your dreams, for example.
Oh no!
And
Think.
then
Have
like
you
There
watched
was but there
Black
was
Mirror?
actually one. Sorry, Amanda.
yes,
There
it's one
was
of my favorite
actually
shows. Sorry, lady. But Black Mirror is a fantastic show that's fucked up in
It's
every way
creepy as
possible. Everyone go
fuck.
watch it.
one documentary quite a long time ago, and it was about a bunch of people were shown certain images while and they were in the MRI machine and their brain was being scanned. And they sort of mapped the brain and the impulses and whatnot from those images. And then when those people went to sleep, or were thinking about something, they tried to translate the images from the brain back to video. And actually, it was somewhat accurate, but I don't remember what experiment it was or anything. But it's
Hmm.
just awful.
They've gotten a lot further with stuff like that now. They have the brain all mapped out. They check out serial killers' brains all the time to try and discover how they're different from
Oh yeah, I
regular
remember that.
brains.
They did they were talking about actually finding the gene that's responsible for sociopathy, and then it might actually make you commit murder or
Well,
be higher chances of becoming a criminal. They're
yeah,
saying like 95% of the prison population has this one specific gene.
what they've actually proven is that being a sociopath or a psychopath is far more common than they thought.
It's 1 in 10, but not everyone's actually murderous. Like that's
We'll
also
call
Yeah,
a
it
myth.
high
it
functioning
takes
sociopaths.
it takes a very specific mix of the personality of the person themselves, their past, and being a psychopath or a sociopath.
Haha,
For them
nature
to
Well,
and
be
nurture.
that.
so interesting nature and nurture. You could be born a psychopath and just have low empathy levels, but if you're exposed to some sort of violence and in a bad family, then you'd be more likely to
Well,
become a psychopath and become
Is
murderous and a
isn't
serial
isn't
killer.
that exactly where the traumatic brain injury situations come to light right now? Will Smith did that movie about the traumatic brain injury recently, and I feel like that's
You
been
mean
in the news quite a
concussion?
bit.
Yeah.
No,
There's
concussion and traumatic brain injuries. They elevate they increase your levels of
a
aggression,
violence and aggression.
violence, aggression, and poor impulse control. Which is
They
why I
actually
kind of feel
found
like I do have a traumatic brain injury from when I was all the time.
And damage to your frontal lobe before it finishes developing. So, like in your childhood or your young adulthood, you get a good hard smack to the front of your head. It's not good. It affects the decision making portion of your
Yeah,
brain.
yeah.
It's specifically bad because my mom specifically liked to hit me in the head a lot. Like she would like, no up until I was 23 she would walk in and fucking throw shoes at my head, my steel toe boots. Like this isn't a new thing. I'm pretty sure I do have traumatic brain injury, and that's why I have really poor impulse control and a tendency for stupid behavior.
Yeah, my mom liked to say that she didn't ever whoop us, but she sure as shit did like to throw things. And
Yeah,
me.
like I had this toy car. It was about palm sized and it was all metal and like had blinking lights. My mom accidentally walked into it and like kicked it. And she got really pissed off. She picked it up and threw it at my head. I think I still have the scar from it.
My mom and my little sister were fighting and arguing, and I was supposed to be washing the dishes. And I decided I was gonna, sneak out while they were arguing. And she got a hold of me by the hair and threw me into the sink and told me to wash the damn dishes.
So note to everyone in the audience: if you're gonna beat your kids, avoid the
The
head.
head, yes.
Yeah,
That's how you do it. They actually found that prison populations have a high rate of traumatic brain injuries. So
That's why I
but
brought it up, because this is supposed to be a combination of the sociopathy gene and traumatic head injuries that actually literally de-inhibit you from was making stupid decisions and making you more aggressive and
but guess
violent.
what? Exercise and eating well and just being healthy can reverse the effects. So yeah,
And deciding to change, because your perception is your reality, and like I've already said before,
Yeah.
you can change the neural pathways in your brain with
yeah.
effort.
Epigenetics is showing that more and more every day that you can change the nature of your genes.
Your brain is
But you
extremely
know what else
powerful.
could
Look at
cause traumatic brain injuries? Staying up for 11 days straight, which was another experiment they did in in this book, where they wanted to see how long someone could stay awake for. And the symptoms that would start happening as someone stayed awake. And very similarly, you can be up to like similar to schizophrenia. People start hallucinating, they start forgetting how to speak. Um, what else? They like couldn't they had to do a lot to keep the guy awake. They kept like slapping him and keeping him busy with activities,
yeah,
all sorts of stuff.
the longest I ever went was a week when I was a kid, and as long as I kept my mind busy, I could stay awake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what were the record breaks there? Shit, where's
It
this?
was 266.5 hours was the Guinness World Book, but then someone in Cambridge went 449 hours without sleep while participating in a rocking chair marathon. So no one knows the maximum time, but that's the longest one. And apparently, like, there's no real long-term effects, like a good night's sleep. Yeah, and you're back to normal afterwards.
The
There,
first guy that broke the record for the experiment had a 16-hour nap and then was perfectly fine the next day.
Yeah.
they're actually starting to believe that, or they're starting to show signs that you can permanently damage your brain with an interrupted sleep pattern, especially if it's an extended interrupted sleep pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and that good night's sleep is not going to recover. You permanently damage your brain by doing that.
Yeah, well, that's if you prevent people from going into REM. So
There's
they
another
actually did this where they would prevent people from being able to, as soon as because there's stages of sleep. There's like stage one, that is like you're kind of awake, but your body starts going into like lower temperature and whatever. And then REM is when you're dreaming. And they found that preventing people from dreaming was actually really, really bad and could have serious effects on them. And they would make up the time when they were given opportunity later to sleep. But if it's done over like a long period of time, which is probably one way that people would get tortured, the effects would be permanent.
Oh, and the poor puppies. There was one woman
Oh
where
yeah, they
rushed
did it to the
into.
puppies too.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
poor
thought it was
animals.
kittens.
Animal
no
abuse was
puppies.
very big in this book.
Very, especially in the third chapter.
Except for like the earlier ones, which were the 1800 ones, where they were trying to figure out how you could shock people and bring them back to life to shock the heart. They would keep getting like execute people who would get executed. So they'd get hung, and then right away they'd take their bodies and transfer them to the lab to try to bring them
And
back.
and a few hundred years later, that Spanish guy actually managed to make stuff start and going back to the same thing. But
Yeah, which is, I guess, where the what is that thing that they do to shock people to bring their heart back? The a fibrillator? Is that what it's
Yeah, the
called?
defibrillator.
Defibrillator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Um, Go ahead.
they did, psychopathic things for science. That's why I said the majority of them probably were psychopaths. But it did advance science, so you can't really fault the fact that it worked.
Yeah. And here's another one that was really good. I'm gonna post the link in the chat. And so so this test is you have to count the amount of times the ball is transferred between people in white t-shirts.
Oh,
And
the gorilla
then
experiment.
yes. And then the second time you count the amount of times that the ball is transferred in black t-shirts. And if you should
Okay,
we ruin it or
that was
should we?
horribly stated. That was horribly stated. First of all, What the experiment did was they make people watch a video of people playing basketball, but not really playing basketball, mock
No,
playing
I
basketball.
posted the link of what they're doing.
Okay. Oh, you posted the actual thing, and your
Yeah.
job is to count the amount of times the white team passes to each other versus, and then the second time around you count the amount of times that the black team passes the ball.
And then you have to see if you notice something.
No, you don't have to see if you notice anything. But whatever. If people are gonna do the experiment, then they might as well do it. But like, we'll have to come back to this experiment later.
Okay, so yeah, we'll just post it and then everyone can come back to it later. We're not going to tell you what the experiment actually is.
Wait, how are we supposed to come back to it later? Are we supposed to do a follow-up video?
Next week on our next book club. I don't know. Come in Discord and tell us what you thought, or comment in the comment sections about whether you caught
Okay,
you
no,
caught
fuck
it.
that. Just spoil it. The whole point.
Really? It's
Fine.
a good one.
Okay, fine. I'll talk about the goddamn kittens, the horrible tortured kittens.
Can I just say
So
real quick, I hate Discord.
Do you? Why?
Because I only have it on my phone. I don't get to use my husband's computer that often, just for editing videos, really. And Discord for mobile, it sucks. It bugs me so often.
That's probably why you're suffering.
Yeah.
Because you're using the mobile version. If
I
you
never
get the
check
desktop
it.
version-
Very rarely will I remember to check the stupid thing.
Okay, well, we'll try getting a hold of you through Twitter or other places.
It's much easier to get hold of me on Twitter. I try to remember to check just specifically for y'all, but it does drive me nuts, so I don't really check it that often.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind. The kittens. How'd you like the tortured kittens?
Don't torture kittens.
Guys?
They're cute.
Well, one of the scientists decided to.
There were tons of
Yeah.
kittens that were tortured.
Shit. I vaguely remember one with a constant beheading. Or was it dogs? Was it? Okay, so there's
I
one
think
where.
every single animal got beheaded.
Yeah.
No, okay. There's this one. It was a kitten sleep experiment where they tried to see if they could prevent the cats from going into REM sleep. So he started putting lesions on the brain of the cats, and at some point the cats would actually fall asleep and start acting out their dreams because he disconnected their ability to disconnect the brain from the body while they slept.
That one. Yeah.
That's
The cat sleepwalking experiment.
Yeah, so basically he induced sleepwalking in cats, but it was like permanent.
But it wasn't an actual sleepwalking, something was different. What?
Yes. But yeah, but later on, another scientist decided to take the kittens and be like, huh, I wonder if it matters. And he started putting the lesions on different parts of the brain. Depending on where you put the lesion, the cat would act out different activities. But that's like a lot of cats to go through just to figure out which parts of the center of the mass of the brain does what.
That's why
Dude,
nowadays.
in the first part of the book, there was that one of the head obsessed people. How many dogs does he
There were
kill?
several. There were several beheadings.
Well, I mean,
no, but he had piles of dog heads. It was,
Yep.
I remember.
I'm gonna try and find it right now.
back then though, they were trying to figure out the science of, anatomy and how things worked. So they needed
Yeah.
to do experiments on these larger animals to correlate it to humans. Nowadays, we're doing like experiments on genetics and figuring out how that affects things. So we've moved on to fruit flies because then we're not really harming anything.
There's still animal experiments, though.
Unless we release cases.
We have a friend in the other Discord who's a geneticist, and he vivisects, or I don't know if they're vivisection. He dissects a lot of mice, an enormous number of them, and they have tumors riddled up throughout their bodies, or hemorrhages, variety of things that are the result of tweaking one gene or another, and then subjecting the mouse to stress, and then they see what occurs. They did something where
They put human genes in their brains. That I saw.
Sure.
What?
They injected basically human brain cells or human brain genes into embryonic mice and let them grow up with much larger, more human-like brains.
And what happened?
I didn't see what actually happened. I just had heard about the study. I haven't actually seen what happened in it.
Okay,
I read
Oh.
about
I
that.
think I know exactly what that was. It was for the course of 25 years, a university in England who has been performing with chimeras, experimenting. They continuously try to crossbreed humans and other animals. Like they'll take human DNA and implant it into fish. They'll take it, implant it into monkeys, into dogs, all the
They did
embryos
the
they possibly
human ape
could.
hybrid. They in this book they tried to do it.
We can transition into that. But I mean, for 25 years, they kept trying to just create embryos that are literally chimeras that have both human and animal DNA inside of them. But this was kept really, really secret up until about 7 years ago, where they finally shut down the university and shut down the project and finally released all their findings.
Okay, see, I thought it
And
was
I bet they
recent,
were
but
being
maybe
funded by the CIA for superior warfare or something.
I thought it was recent, but maybe it's just that we're finding out about it recently.
Maybe someone took up the experiment and tried to do it again, or tried to
The,
re.
the DNA experiments have to be relatively recent. But I mean, what this guy in the other Discord, he does the CRISPR editing,
Right.
and he's operating, I guess, out of Georgia, and yeah, no, it's all. There are a variety of different genes that are associated with different medical conditions, and so they see if they can remove that gene and avoid the medical condition, or tweak it in some way.
Like in 20 years, how much do you guys think science will progress? How long will lifespan be?
Well, hold on. When did we invent Kevlar?
I don't know.
This is a quick
First
Google search
version of
away.
Kevlar was really old.
But like, you guys know how we get Kevlar now, right?
No,
Um,
I don't even know what
Okay.
Kevlar is.
Kevlar is that bulletproof fabric that we keep using for
Yeah,
bulletproof vests and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh,
What spider goats?
that's what I was gonna say. Don't they have use spider web, or they're thinking of using this one spider's web they found in the
Yes,
Amazon?
but spiders don't produce enough of it for it to be fully viable, so they implanted the same genes into goats for goats to produce the same spider silk within their milk glands.
But did
So
you
that's how we
see?
get Kevlar now.
Did
No,
you
it's,
see
no,
that
this is like
spider?
that's
ridiculous
not
Hunger
right.
Games shit.
Kevlar is not spider silk. No, I'm sorry, look that up.
But did you
It's
see
not spider silk. It's
the
spider goat
spider
silk.
they
It's
recently
not. It's
discovered?
no. It's not organic at all, or at least not. It's not. It doesn't come from spiders of any kind. It's a polymer. Well, I mean, look. Maybe I'm wrong. Look.
Well, I don't know. I thought it was from the spiders too. But did you see the spider they recently discovered? I'll have to look. I just watched the video on it the other day. That it's a very relatively small spider, but it's making massive webs that are stronger than Kevlar, that stretch across a big old river. But they're relatively small spiders producing this large amount of
Is
web.
it like a spider that has just recently been found and always
Yeah.
existed, or is it a new hybrid spider that's evolutionary evolving?
The way that it was presented as one recently discovered, not
Oh,
they didn't say it was a new spider.
because this feels like soon, like the Hunger Games shit is gonna start happening, where they're gonna just start taking animals and like
Right?
having mockingjays and.
Already they were trying to use cockroaches and cats and stuff for they were doing experiments on them to make them microphones and things to send them in as spies. That's
Oh,
not
there
in
was
the book. It should be.
there was one in that one. There's something about cockroaches, but I didn't read that one because I don't like cockroaches. But there was one that about birds being used to send messages or flight plans or something in war.
Yeah,
Do you remember that one?
Okay, so biosteel is a trademark name for the high-strength fiber-based material made of whatever the fuck spider silk, like protein, extracted from the milk of the transgenic goats made by something biolaboratories.
Right. Yeah, but
Right.
Kevlar is synthesized in a solution from polymers, blah blah blah, concentration reaction yielding hydrochloric acid as a byproduct. The result has a liquid crystalline behavior. Blah 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 blah. It's a product from the DuPont Corporation. It's
Okay, so it's not straight up Kevlar. The biosteel. Okay, so it's two separate things, but
yeah.
okay. Sorry. Spider goats.
No, spider goats are pretty cool.
Spider goat.
The cockroaches, the shit. What was the cockroach one? I think they were racing them, weren't they?
I think so.
Did you
I
ever
don't know
remember the
which one it
cockroach
was. The one with the birds I can't find again either.
The
Well,
homing
they-
pigeons?
Yeah. What were those?
They
Go ahead.
They definitely did back in like I do believe like the 60s and 70s, maybe even a little earlier than that, attempt to use like cockroaches and cats as spies. They would try taping microphones to them. They tried training the cats to bring back information. They tried all kinds of
Cats
things.
did not give a fuck, probably.
You can buy a kit right now that lets you remote control a cockroach.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually really simple. All you do is you attach these little electrodes basically to the cockroach's antennae, and I think it mostly just heats up one antennae or the other, and the cockroach will just turn in that direction.
do
And
you
so you
think,
sort of steer it. Yeah.
do you
the
think
remote control.
Russia and America are going to go into another Cold War and just like experiment technology wars?
We're still
Sending.
technically in one.
That's true. When did the Cold War ever actually end?
No, not technically. Not really.
Well,
Although
we're
I
still-
guess when-
literally Hillary Clinton is
Well, the
going for
country
nuclear
is-
war with Russia because Russia is apparently infiltrating American society and influencing their election through subversive spy-like tactics. They're now just called
Actually,
hacking.
China is.
Oh, no one wants to talk about China.
Well,
Yeah,
China
because we
is straight
can't.
up influencing America through Hollywood because getting a slot of one of your movies displayed in China is so rare. You had to meet certain qualifications to do it
Yeah.
that people fight for it and they alter their movies because of it.
And like, let's not talk about how much America probably tries to influence China's elections,
Guys,
or
propaganda.
like elections and overthrows governments all over the world.
Everyone produces propaganda. Everything you ever see is propaganda. It's
Oh,
either
yeah.
meant to make you buy things or it's meant to make you vote for somebody. Or
Like-
have an opinion. Everything's just trying to sway you. Everything's trying to manipulate you. Always remember that and you'll live a happy life. Or not
Every-
a happy life.
Everybody lies all the time. How?
The only difference is what they lie about.
I don't think that's true at all. I think lying is too much work for people. People are too dumb to lie all the time.
that's exactly what a liar would say. They wanted us to not pay attention to how much they're lying.
I'm the worst liar ever. That takes creativity. My brain
Which is
like,
exactly what an amazing liar would say.
that's the most uncreative thing to say as a liar, to say you're a bad liar. That's
I know, it's genius.
so I think we did most of it. We covered
Wait. The human ape experiments. I kind of wanted
yeah.
to cover that.
We didn't cover that. And I also wanted to go through the bystander effect.
Okay, you do the bystander effect. I'll try to see what else we can talk about.
So the bystander effect was one where it's pretty much, so the story is there was this girl who was getting like physically beaten and assaulted in New York in front of in a complex, like in an apartment complex, and there was over this assault went on for like 3 hours. Like the guy left and then came back and continued beating the crap out of this girl, and everybody was watching but nobody called the cops. And the reason that is that the more people there were, they'd assume that somebody else has already called the cops and they wouldn't call. So they wanted to test this. And so they created different kinds of scenarios in which people would or wouldn't call the cops. And so that they found that when it's one person alone, they'll always do it. The more people you add, the less likely you are to call the cops. And then they found that in emergency situations, what's important to do is actually designate someone. And like, so you have to be like, you go call the cops, because then nobody will. And so this story was like this horrible story that happened where this girl, got beat up for like 4 hours and people just watched and no one did anything about it because they were just waiting for somebody else to go do something about it. And so they found that in other situations, they did different kinds of testing to see like when people would be more likely to help. And I don't think this was in the book. This is another psychology experiment that they did where they wanted to see when if someone was pulled over and like with their car, like if their car had broke down, under what circumstances people would be more likely to help. And they actually found that if they had recently just driven by and seen another car that was broken down and somebody helping them, they'd be more likely to help the next guy that they saw a car broken down, as opposed to when that condition wasn't there, more people drove by without stopping. So this was also showing like kind of mirroring behavior. Like if you witness somebody else helping, you're more likely to help yourself, as opposed to if you don't witness, more people will just be like, oh, somebody else is going to deal with it. So that was some of the interesting stuff about helping behavior and the bystander effect.
Well, it also kind of speaks to the still there animal mentality of humans that you're just kind of waiting around for somebody else to take charge of a situation. Like you don't want to be the one that has to be the boss. You're waiting for someone else to be the boss.
Pretty much. Because people don't want the responsibility. And even in crimes, that does become a responsibility. Like when you're the one who gets called, you're like police are going to want to talk to you, you're going to be involved. Like it's a whole ordeal. To be a witness to a crime, for example, is not a like you don't just make a phone call and then leave. Like people can do it anonymously, but it might take up your life to some extent.
Well, also the other part about crap, I lost my train of thought. I had something else to say. But the other part of the experiment you'd said about fuck.
Oh, he was raping her too with a knife. That's awful.
Yeah,
This went on for a half an hour. Lights came on in apartments. People came to their windows to see, but nobody came to her aid.
Is that the
Kitty Genovese. Yeah.
Kitty Genevieve, there you go.
This happened in 1964.
Yeah, that's super famous. I learned about it first from Boondock Saints, and then I looked it up and found out it was a real thing.
Oh, I like that movie.
That is an awesome movie. But I don't know, I kind of killed it because I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. We're pretty much hitting the 2-hour mark anyway. Does anyone else want to talk about anything real quick?
Oh, you wanted to talk about
Well,
the chimps?
there were the two other experiments that were sort of fun. The Coca-Cola and Pepsi one and the wine test.
People hands down prefer Coke. Coke is better than Pepsi, no matter what condition.
Unless you're drinking Pepsi.
Even if we can't tell the difference.
I'm weird, I guess. I prefer Pepsi. Coke tastes disgusting. Tastes like cleaning fluid.
You see, here's the problem. Since we read the experiments, and the Coke versus Pepsi experiments, they let people, they hook people up to what is it called, the brain scanners, and they made them drink Coca-Cola and made them drink Pepsi to see what happens. And when they drank Coca-Cola, they preferred it quite heavily. But the regions of the brain
they
that lit up,
preferred your incorrect. They preferred the beverage labeled Coca-Cola.
Yes.
No. I was just trying to get to that. What they saw was they preferred Coca-Cola, but the parts of the brain that lit up were closer to the religious aspects of the brain. So they swapped out the containers, and the effect disappeared. Then they poured regular drinks into the Coca-Cola container, and the same where you can pour Pepsi into the Coca-Cola container, and still get that same response. So people prefer Coca-Cola. What they're concluded on is the fact that Coca-Cola's marketing is so strong that it actually religiously embeds itself into your brain, actually altering your taste buds.
See, people try to claim that with me with Dr. Pepper, that I'm so addicted to Dr. Pepper that I just hate the off-brands because of the name. But I've done like taste tests. Like people will try and trip me up like that and give me a different Dr. Pepper off-brand and in a cup, and I don't know. And they'll try and trick me, but I can tell. I know the difference.
Well, if you're someone who drinks it regularly, like you'll know the taste, but
like it was water since I was 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like for an average person who like maybe drinks a Coke like once a week and a Pepsi once a week and a Sprite once a week might not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they say that in other words, Coca-Cola's advertising had a measurable effect on neural response. And I think it's the Christmas stuff that really got to people.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
The other noteworthy company that has a religious following is actually Apple. Scientists actually, this wasn't in the book, but scientists actually started measuring the people's response to Apple products, and it literally replaces their fucking. It's right inside of their religious aspect of the brain. They
Yeah, for
become
sure.
religious Apple addicts.
You see people
So,
stand
so
in line.
turtle-life cultists.
It
Cultists.
is Coca-Cola, Apple, Microsoft. They're all cults. Everything's a cult of identity. Everything.
Well, it was Sigmund Freud's American nephew that did that. He brought
You
for
saw the
the
trap.
huh?
Did you see the trap?
No, I haven't. I just I learned about Sigmund Freud and psychology in college. I was really interested in psychology, and I learned about his nephew that came over here, and he took Sigmund Freud's ideas and like tied them to commercialism.
Yep.
He rebranded breakfast and made bacon and eggs the popular thing. He rebranded a bunch of different stuff, and then later on, he was responsible for some really nefarious shit. And I keep saying, people go watch the documentary. It's called The Trap by BBC. It literally explains how the popular opinion is swayed in society and how we've all been socially engineered to purely be out only for our own best interest, because that makes us far more easily predictable and much easier
And you
to
can
control.
sell more. One of the
And yes,
Yeah,
obviously you're a lot
capitalism.
easier to market to that way as
And
well.
Yeah.
But
we've
we've
been-
been socially engineered to be this way since the 50s by
And to
Sigmund Freud
react-
fucking cousin and John Nash. Sorry, go ahead.
and to react emotionally and to tie things that we hear and see into our emotions because that's how they control you with the commercials.
Oh, for sure.
Look, doesn't that just point to the SJWs and be like, what the fuck is happening there?
There was
Yeah, that's
John
why
John Watson in this book, who was the creator of behavioralism, actually also went on to do a lot of experimental advertising stuff, and he was a little bit of a sociopath as well, apparently. So
A large portion of this book is full of sociopaths and sociopaths funded by the CIA for beneficial brainwashing experiments and manipulation.
that's what I'm
This book-
saying.
Yeah,
This book is
it's the
fantastic.
psychology of it's a lot to do with marketing too. Like there was this other segment about smells and how certain smells make people spend more money and whatnot.
yeah,
Oh, the hidden smell, which is okay.
And colors.
Yes. Even the guy who did the experiment of the men and women coming up to each other and asking them for sex, like the footnote at the end of that story is that he had so much fucking problems getting published that it took him like seven
yeah.
7 years to actually publish his goddamn paper because everyone scoffed at it and said this has no relevance in science, until he like latched onto another feminist and then she helped him have it published by some,
And then it like was huge and everywhere, so
it was
people were
huge, but
interested.
he hasn't done. But after that, he pretty much quit and just started working for advertising companies. Literally saying he was working for them to manipulate people into manipulating their sex drive and their animal brain to buy more products.
Well, I mean, because the people that are most going to be interested in psychology are, let's be honest, the people with psychological problems themselves.
Ouch.
And so I'm just being honest. And so they're going to go with what makes them more money. And that makes them more money than helping people. Fucking with people makes them
Oh,
more money.
I'm so gonna sell out and go work for a big corp as soon as I'm done my PhD in psychology. Like for sure. Fuck this. Fuck
I was
academia.
super interested in psychology totally because I have my own problem.
Yeah, of course. You want to figure out what's wrong with you.
Exactly. That's the only reason you get really interested in it. You think it's to figure out other people's problems, and you are interested in other people's problems, but only really so far as that you're trying to figure out your own.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess we said it here, guys. I have mental problems now.
You're a chick that just like comes with the
That's a
vagina.
given.
Okay, so I think that kind of wraps us up. Whose pick is next?
Well, we don't have an next pick, actually.
I thought it was Maryland.
And I was gonna offer the next pick to Amanda and or Will, given that they actually read the damn book and come on.
Well,
Actually,
Pat
I
was
feel bad saying I did not manage to read the book. I'm just really interested in psychology, so it worked out really well.
Yeah. Well, this one was okay because it was just, but the next book, if you guys have something that you did want to get to, we can do that. But like, please actually read it and show up.
Well, actually, if anybody has read it or you want to read it, the Earth Children series, the first book is called Clan of the Cave Bear. It's really interesting. This chick took a lot of time to research how far they had gone in evolution and fossil discovery and stuff like that before she wrote these
Oh,
books.
wait. Actually, I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but that is how do you pronounce your name? Diogenes?
we call him Will.
You can call me Will.
Okay. Okay, so well, I remember you actually suggesting
Dinosaur
American
erotica?
Gods, and it's actually a pretty relevant thing considering all the themes about what kind of
American
language.
Gods.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a Neil Gaiman book.
Wait, you
Yeah,
suggested
it's-
American Gods, and I suggested we watch the TV show American Gods.
Well,
Is it
you
debatable?
guys do whatever you guys want. I don't care.
Well, will you actually read it and come talk to
I
us
will-
about it?
Sure. I mean, I have already read it, so I can.
Okay,
read
so
it.
that's a good. So that's at least the step in the right direction.
I mean, I support this 100%. It's like basically about dysfunction and family. If you read through between the lines, it's amazing.
Well, it's also about belief and what a god really is. I mean, I think to a large extent what Gaiman was going through with that, it was an interesting thought experiment, is he looked at ancient peoples and he said, why did they worship these things and why did their gods take on the forms they did? And then once he came up with some reasons, he then looked at the modern society and he said, who are our gods? And then he came up with this narrative of this clash between the old and the new gods.
Okay.
That's
Is there going to
American
be a good
Gods.
discussion surrounding it?
I mean, I could, as you can already
We
hear,
can talk about hours.
I'm about
Okay,
to
so you're
start
ready
one, so
to
I'm not
go.
going to do that. I can go now. I don't care.
No. You should. Okay, and then the book that Amanda, I have it written down, the Earth Children series. So we'll keep that on the list of.
Yeah, because I do think it's interesting to like look back at an overview of the new ideas they have coming out about evolution and where we came from as a species and how it affects
Is
us
this a
today.
nonfiction book?
This one, it is a fiction story, but she did a lot of genuine
Okay.
research into the way things were back then, and I think it comes out really spot on.
Okay, and is American Gods fiction or nonfiction?
It's super fiction. It's
Okay,
got,
good. Okay.
It's got, you know, all kinds.
No, I mean,
all kinds of gods show up. Just spoiler. It'll happen.
Okay, is a novel okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't want to read nonfiction again. I would like to read fiction.
And I suggest you try the extended BBC version audiobook. It's voiced by several actors.
How oh, it's 465 pages. Okay. So next book is American Gods.
It's well written, I thought.
Okay. No, I prefer reading as opposed to audiobooks, but if I see that I'm running out of time, then
Oh, sure, but it's well written. It's a page turn.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So next book is American Gods for everyone, and then whoever reads it and joins us gets picks on following books. We've made the exception this week with Will and Amanda, but I expect you guys to actually start reading the books at some point.
So authoritarian.
Yeah, it just so happened that I got really busy like right after I was like, oh yes, there's a book club, I want to do this, and it's like, oh, all this other stuff you have to now do as well.
I know.
Okay.
I understand, but I really want to make this book club work because
Yeah,
I think,
we're gonna
I do
keep
too.
pushing and
yeah,
pushing.
I'm not gonna let it die, even if I have to sit here and talk by myself about a book. So
Oh, Joy.
yeah, no, Lady Bastard, you've been amazing. I couldn't have done this without you.
Not
So-
today, not today.
No, you still read, so that's good. And you
I'll
brought
tell
up
you what I'll
getting.
do. Well, because I've already read the book, so that I'm not just being a lazy hassle. I'll actually look and see if I can get something that Gaiman has written about his book,
Okay.
and that way that can possibly add some additional color.
And usually whoever's pick it is has the lead on the stream. Like they get to guide because they picked it and they want to discuss why they picked it.
Oh, so
So,
it's Lady Bastard that's in charge then.
well, both of you are
No,
kind of
no, no,
recommending
yeah.
this book.
Are you sure? Hot take?
I'm just supporting 100% on this.
I'm happy to whatever.
Okay, so how do we? I was gonna try to make book club once a month, to give people more time to read it. But we will. I guess we'll wait to set a date and see how it's going,
Yeah.
and how good
Well,
if this book is
ask
really.
people if they're be able to, it's going to vary from week to week. So,
Yeah.
you know.
But if like it's a really good book and people can't put it down and finish sooner, then we can have the stream sooner.
Mhm.
So whenever everyone's ready, we could kind of have it going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess you just have to check back in the Discord to see what the
Yes.
update's like, except for Amanda, which we will have to actually tweet at.
Y'all don't have to like do anything special for me. I'll just try to get better about checking more often.
We'll try to find we should find another if Discord's not working for you though, there has to be another place where we could reach you.
I will. Yeah, Twitter is an easier place to reach me. I just feel bad making y'all do something special for me. I will eventually have my own computer to do things
Yes.
on, hopefully.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So thank you everybody for listening. Read the book. Do it. It's good for you.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night. We'll see you next time.
Bye.